Hello, I'm Katie and this is Stepmum Space, the judgment-free zone where we'll talk candidly about the fairy tales and scary tales of stepmom life. So whether you've been a stepmom for years, you're just starting out, or you want to understand the stepmom in your life a little bit better, this is the place for you. This is the last episode I'm recording in 2022, and before we get started, I wanted to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you who's listened to the podcast, shared the podcast, messaged me, followed me on the socials, or commented or shared posts, and of course, those women who have got in touch and bravely shared their stories. None of this would be possible without you, so a huge, heartfelt thank you. If you're looking to improve your happiness and well-being in this role in the new year, I'm really excited to be running another Stepmum Space workshop in January, where you can meet other stepmums, learn tools and techniques, and craft an action plan to make your stepmum life easier and take you from drama to karma. Head to the website www.stepmumspace.com to find out more and follow @stepmumspace for the latest info and offers on coaching and workshops. I love working with stepmums in one-to-ones and groups and seeing the transformative effect spending time on yourself can have. Please prioritise yourself for a change. You will not regret it. So back to today's episode then. My guest today is Jane. Jane's husband is a widower and she is a stepmom to a 13-year-old girl. I was absolutely bowled over by Jane's courage, compassion and the strength she has, which has got her through some really tricky situations. Jane brings unique perspectives to lots of stepfamily situations, which I know many of you will identify with, even if your partner's ex is still very much in the picture. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Hi, Jane. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing all right, thanks. Yeah,
Good.
It's a crazy Christmas, so yeah, it brings up a lot of emotions this time of year, doesn't it? So it's always bracing yourself a little bit for what's to come.
Yeah, it's always really difficult in any family, but I think particularly in step families. And I guess as we talk, we'll find out a bit more about perhaps why Christmas is maybe a bit more challenging and brings up some more complex emotions in your situation. So why don't you start by telling us a bit about how you met your husband?
Yeah, sure. So we've got a bit of a probably fairly unusual story. So my husband was previously married, and I was friends with his who's now late wife. So our family, my family and her family, were friends and had been for years, even since kind of before we were born. So I knew her. I didn't really know him. And then she got cancer and got ill and died. And then he and I became friends just through, I think, him commenting on a social media post that I put on. And then we ended up kind of COVID hit and we ended up just sort of banter back and forth, just joking around. That was company. And then it just sort of went from there, really. Neither of us saw it coming at all. And then we just messaged more and more, and then started to look forward to hearing from him. And I remember looking back and thinking, if any other single guy had been messaging me like that, I would have thought something was going on. But because of his situation, I just didn't expect it at all. So then when he did kind of say something about this could be more than just friends, it really took me by surprise, and I just didn't see it coming at all.
And how did you feel when he kind of said, maybe this could be more than friends?
I was gobsmacked. It really surprised me. I think also the way he did it. So he's got a 13-year-old daughter. She's now 13. At the time, she was 10. He sent me this really long message saying, I've just been talking to her and she's asked me, the conversation of daddy and women has come up. And she asked me who you were. He said, she'd seen your name popping up a lot, and she asked who you were and if there was something going on. And so I was honest with her, and I think he used some really cheesy analogy, like, I explained that our friendship was like a plant that I wanted to water to see. And now I look back and I think, oh my goodness, I can't believe I stayed with you.
You probably thought it was incredibly romantic at the time.
I think I laughed at him at the time, but yeah. So he kind of tried to simplify it for her, and she got it. So I think it was fairly soon after his wife had died, but she'd been ill for a long time, for years, and both he and his daughter had had counselling throughout that time. So by the time she died, they were in a very different place to, I think, a lot of other people. And they'd already had conversations. She'd said, oh, when mummy dies, do you think you'll remarry, and things like that. So they talked about that quite a lot. So yeah, a bit of a different story, I think, than some people, especially with a global pandemic in the mix as well.
Yeah, like take on quite a lot at one go. So you mentioned that you were childhood friends and you sort of knew her, but maybe didn't know her husband. So were you kind of close? Were you at her funeral or those types of things?
We weren't close sort of in later years, so but I was at her funeral. That was weird when you look back, and so he and I messaged and chatted on the phone and stuff, but the last time I'd seen him in person was at his wife's funeral, which was really strange. Obviously he's talking about another woman in that way. It was just really weird. So she and I knew each other as friends when we were kids. So our families like went on holiday together when we were kids and things like that. And then sort of at a time where I went to uni and she moved away, we lost touch a bit. So we would see each other now and again at big events and say hi, but no kind of close friendships as such.
Yeah, so I guess in the middle of a pandemic, dating was a bit of a minefield anyway, but add this on, it must have been even more complicated.
It really was. So as I was saying, when we were talking and just sort of messaging, and then when we would maybe FaceTime in the evenings and stuff, it was when we were all in full lockdown right at the beginning, where no one could see anybody. And then a few months later, you were allowed to go for sort of socially distanced walks and things like that happened. So we arranged to. So we went on a walk, me, him, and his daughter, a socially distanced walk.
A socially distanced walk with someone's child is probably
Yes,
one of the least
yeah,
romantic
yeah.
first dates you can
So
have.
yeah, so a 10-year-old chaperone. It was great. And then we went and sat in his garden again, socially distanced, and he sort of cooked, and she and I sat and watched. I think we watched like Friends on her laptop or something. So I ended up staying there for like quite a few hours. It was really nice, but it was just one of those things where the beginning of everything was all socially distanced, and obviously she was around all the time. So it was certainly not your usual typical. I joke to my husband now, like I'm like a few years later, I'm like, when does the romance start? Like we never quite had it.
I think that a lot actually with step families, that everything kind of goes back to front and your relationship starts off so difficult and then
Yeah.
tends to get, I mean, we've been together 9 years and we've just had a honeymoon.
Yeah.
So, it does happen eventually.
Yeah.
And how was your stepdaughter with you in the early days?
She was great. So she was our number one fan. I mean, to be honest, to begin with, she was the only one that knew about it. But so the first time I met up with them, when I went to leave, she was in tears and was like, are you going to get married? And she wanted to know everything. We're like, we're not even officially a couple or anything. We're just sort of seeing what happens. And so from day one, she was definitely our biggest fan, really keen. We kept it quiet for a while, and she was the one who got really frustrated as well about that, because she just wanted to tell people. So she was really happy about it. And talking to her about it now, she's looks back and she says, well, my dad was so happy, you made my dad so happy. So I kind of figured that, to me, it was a bit like you were the answer, because actually things have been really hard. And so looking back, at the time we were very aware that kind of for the first year or so she very much put me on a pedestal, which was quite hard. So she was very much like, oh, I'm really excited for you to become my stepmom, and sort of almost treating me like a mum straight away. And we were very wary of that, because I've always been very clear with her that it's not in any way like a rejection, but more of a sort of working out the boundaries. So I've always been very clear that I'm not her mum. Actually, her mum died, and I'm in no way here to replace her, and that I'm her stepmom, or I would be her stepmom, and so therefore we will create our own relationship, which will be different. But actually, what I'm not here to do is to fill her mum's place. And so I was always very clear from day one about that. And I think initially for her, I think it was easy to sort of fill that hole that she was feeling. And myself and my husband were very conscious of that at the time.
Yeah, and I guess it could have gone one way or the other. It could have been like, I just want my mum here, I don't want you, or the situation that you experienced.
Yeah. And I think, to be honest, I think one of the things that is really positive is obviously I knew her mum. So, I've got my own stories of her mum. I've got my own, her mum and I went to the same school, and so actually I've got my own photos of her mum that she's never seen and that my husband's never seen. And, so actually it makes it much easier to then talk about her, because actually I knew her. There's no sort of mystery around it, which is quite nice for her.
Yeah, definitely. And in the beginning, I guess kind of keeping this relationship a secret. Can you talk a little bit about why you chose to do that?
Well, it was horrible. I didn't. It wasn't fully my. It was kind of my decision. I agreed to it, but I think basically people were still grieving. They had. So she had died. A pandemic had hit, and people were sort of frozen in their grief a little bit because they were dealing with the pandemic, and so we agreed that we would wait. We didn't want to kind of ruffle feathers if actually then it wasn't going to be a long-term thing. So we said we'd give it 6 months and keep it quiet. Within that time, we agreed that we would then tell her family, so his late wife's family, and we told my parents around that time. I really struggled to keep it a secret from my family because it just didn't really feel right. I guess the
Mm,
fact that we were all socially distanced from each other helped. We weren't really seeing
yeah.
each other helped.
Yeah, I guess it's not like
um,
you're going around for dinners and things, but really
no,
difficult because it's such a exciting, wonderful thing for you to have
yeah,
met somebody that you're forming such a good connection with, but
and
yet
I
you
think
can't
from
share it.
Yeah, and from my end, everyone was just happy and excited. My friends were all excited about it. There were no mixed emotions, whereas his side of things, it was difficult for some people because actually it kind of made it even more in their face that actually she wasn't here anymore. His family were great. So from the beginning, they just sort of embraced me. They were really good. So when you could meet up together in gardens and stuff, I went and met them. Yeah, and they were brilliant. They really did just sort of welcome me in, really. I think some of his friends struggled, just more in terms of when I met them. That some were brilliant and just sort of opened their arms to me and just embraced it. And I think because they'd walked the journey with him, they could see where he was at. So actually, the thing that was reassuring for me was that everybody said it made sense to them because they knew where he was at. Because obviously, when you get in that situation, it can be a worry that, is this a rebound? Is he suddenly going to turn around and say, actually, you know, I'm not
Yeah.
ready for this? But everyone was so affirming of the fact that, they could see where he was at in his sort of grief journey and they felt he was ready for it. There were a couple of close friends that struggled, but not in terms of, it was never felt like a personal thing. It was very much that, they were really deeply missing her. And so it was difficult for them to see him with somebody else. Whereas I think the biggest challenge by far was her family. And that was a really difficult situation. So when he told them, they reacted really badly, and they were very angry at him, and they they and ever since as well they've sort of treated me like I'm the other woman. It was as if we've had an affair, and that's been really difficult. So yeah, they said some quite unpleasant things, quite hurtful things to him at the beginning, and we're very conscious of the fact that actually that's just coming out of their grief. One comment they did make, which was helpful right at the beginning, is that it wasn't a personal thing about me, because obviously they've known me since before I was, since I was born.
From their perspective as grandparents, it's somebody that they know their background. They know you're going to be caring in their granddaughter's life, but really
Yeah,
difficult for you.
yeah, and when we talked to my stepdaughter about it, because she's very conscious of the dynamics, and we were like, well, there won't be any awkward getting to know you because they already know me and things like that. But actually, I think they're so, and still, we're sort of 2.5 years on, they're so consumed by their grief. I think they just cannot see through it. It's still a real struggle, to be honest. And I think one of the difficult things is that, so my stepdaughter goes to them and to their family things and sees them quite a bit, but my husband obviously doesn't go. But it means that they're quite strong characters, and so for her, she ends up feeling quite caught in the middle, because then they'll make comments to her, and it's really difficult. I mean, at the beginning, she would come back from theirs in tears, saying, "I don't want to go back. They try and make me say bad things about Jane," and that was really difficult. Then things settled. Recently, it seems to have cropped up again. So a couple of weeks ago, she went to see Matilda with her grandma, and when they came out, her grandma said, "Oh, does Miss Honey's story remind you of your own? Mum died, and then Dad arranged for an evil woman to come in and look after her."
Shut up.
Yeah. And so straight away, my stepdaughter messaged us saying, "Grandma's just said this," and we were like, "Did she really? Or is this just sort of teenagers
Yeah.
thing?" She was like, "No, she really said that. I don't know what to say." And then later on, her grandma obviously realised it had upset her. And so it was just like, "Oh, that's not what I meant, put it in a box and forget about it." And just didn't deal with it. And so, and things like, and so obviously we then hear through my stepdaughter. So, she was like, oh, grandma's been grilling me on, who does this for you at home, and who does this for you at home, and like, well, who does your Christmas stockings? Obviously Christmas is coming up. And she was like, oh, well, Jane does it. And then, oh, well, what does she get you? Do you get lots of little presents? Do you get big? And she just gets grilled about sort of my role in the house. So she feels really stuck in the middle, which is really difficult, because we're trying not to make them out to be the bad guys, but then it's hard not to, in a way.
Yeah. As you say, you can only have compassion and empathy for someone's grief, but to then put your granddaughter in that situation when you've lost your daughter, like, why? What's to gain? There's nothing.
I think, and I don't have a biological child. I cannot imagine what it must be like, for your to care for your daughter throughout cancer and then watch her die and to lose her. And I can't imagine what that must be like. And I think that's, in a way, what I keep reminding myself is, and their personalities, they don't deal with stuff. My husband and stepdaughter threw themselves into counselling. They don't want to go down that route, and they would rather, so put it in a box, so to speak. And so it does make things more difficult for us. It's trying to walk it with some compassion for them, but also work out, well, what boundaries do we need to put in place, because actually it's just hurting us, and it's making things really difficult for us. And I think for me, because of how our relationship started, and there were things around when we got married, around the wedding and stuff like that, for me, it's been a battle of almost feeling like the illegitimate wife, and they really reinforce that, which is quite difficult, really. One day I hope that they can come to a point where they realise that her not being here is not because I am, that actually, I hope one day they can acknowledge that, the alternative of me being here is that actually my stepdaughter doesn't have any female living here helping her walk through some quite tricky things at the age she's at. Not a case of, if I'm not here, then their daughter would be here, because actually she wouldn't be here either way. But I think they're just not in a place to recognise that at the moment.
No, it definitely sounds like they're not. And does your husband ever kind of follow these things up with his, do you call her ex-mother-in-law? What's the
we don't
language?
Really know what to call. We have to be careful not to call them the outlaws, but it's quite difficult. We don't quite know what to call them. Yeah, he does. So it's difficult because he's not there in person. So I've been challenging him quite a bit recently around, well, actually, what would it look like if you were there? Not obviously encouraging him to go, but actually, if he had been there, they wouldn't be making those comments, or there are things that they try and do, like kind of enforce on her. I'm like, they wouldn't do that if you were there. So you need to start pushing back on them and actually helping her put boundaries in place to help her, and help her just be the kid rather than have to sort of feel like she's being pulled back and forth.
Yeah, because 13's not easy for any child, let alone a child who's going through all of this sort of stuff.
Yeah. And I think, she's changed so much. She's a different kid to the kid her mum knew. And I think that is so hard for them to see, that they then sort of treat her like the kid she was when her mum was around. So it doesn't really feel like they've caught up with who she is now and what she likes now and things like that. So it's quite difficult. We can understand sort of the reasoning behind it, but it's then hard and it's trying to support her to work through that a little bit and accept how they treat her.
And one day she may well turn around and call them out on it.
She might do. She sees it. And I think that, in a way, is a blessing and a curse for her, is that she is very aware of it. As a family, we talk about everything. We don't bury anything at all. And, that's how we've got to this place. I don't think we would have survived as a couple or a family if we hadn't. And, so we have all the awkward conversations. And so actually she sees it and she talks about it and stuff, which actually is helpful, but then probably at times means when she's there, she's more aware of it than she would have been before. One of the things as well, in terms of walking this journey, when you're marrying a widower, and I know this is going to be very different for different women who are in my shoes, but for us, there were certain things around planning the wedding that were really difficult. So it was, it was sort of agreed that I couldn't really have my favourite flower because they had that at her funeral. There was a song that I wanted that I couldn't have because actually they had that at their wedding and their funeral and her funeral. There were certain things, a few things that were just sort of vetoed because they had been associated with her or at their wedding. So that was really hard, because you go into then feeling like you're second, and actually that your choices are limited because of how they did things and what they, actually it's like, well, she got that and they got that. So that was quite difficult.
You know, a lot of the women I talk to have had, or who have been the second wife, it's usually because of a separation or divorce. So they usually kind of actively want to make it as different as possible.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about, I'd like to have this flower, I mean, I don't think I've ever spoken to anybody who hasn't been able to have the flowers they wanted at their wedding.
Yeah. But I think, you know, it's a representation as well of life, you know. So I had to change my perfume because the perfume I wore was one, not even her main perfume, but it was one that she had on the side, so actually my stepdaughter could have seen it. You know, it's things like that where you feel like you're having to squeeze into this mold, and it's really difficult. And my wedding, you know, it was a lovely day and it was great having all those people together, but at the same time I was very aware of the fact that there were a lot of people there where the last time they had seen my husband was at his late wife's funeral. And so there was so many mixed emotions there. You know, when I walked down the aisle, the first person I saw was her brother. Just to clarify, it's been very difficult with her family, but her brother has been great. And actually her brother's been really supportive. And so he purposefully like rearranged his schedule and went out of his way to come to our wedding because he said he wanted to support it. So, you know, I kind of want to make sure that that's clear, that it was great that he did that. But at the same time, you know, with all of the emotion and all of the drama that had gone on before that around her family, then the first person I see when I walked in was him, and it just meant, you know, it complicated things. So for me, the big thing that, you know, that I loved was the honeymoon, because we got 10 days together uninterrupted, which was amazing. And for the first day, because of COVID and, you know, the situation, the first day we had together, just the two of us, was 6 weeks before we got married. So, you know,
Wow.
Our life has been very intense.
So was it just the two of you on your honeymoon, no stepdaughter?
Yeah. No, we purposefully arranged it. So the wedding was at the beginning of September. So then she went back to school. So she was at school while we were away.
So many conflicting emotions, and there's always so much pressure on a wedding as well, that it has to be amazing and it has to be perfect and everyone has to feel that love. And I think when there are any sort of second marriages, it's almost like, to get to that point, something's had to quote unquote fail, or someone's had to die.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be something to do with loss there. Did you have her parents at your wedding?
No, they wouldn't come. No. We invited them. So my husband was adamant he wanted to invite them. I had mixed feelings about that, but they weren't there. And they did say it would just be too hard for them. So her auntie and cousins were there because they're really good friends of mine that I've grown up with. So she did have like extended family. Her extended family were there. But yeah, it's bizarre. It's not the situation you expect to find yourself in when you're little and, you know, like think about getting married and that.
You talked about your stepdaughter putting you on a pedestal at the beginning. How has that developed over the course of time, and as the course of your relationships changed?
Well, as expected, I fell from the pedestal. We always knew it would happen, but I think it was probably around like after we got married. So I moved in around that time, and it's been a really tough year for both of us. And I think in recent weeks, we've really worked out why, and we've been able to change things and help things. But we had got to a point where actually, it was getting really difficult, and I think neither of us really wanted to spend time with each other. And it was really hard. What we've realised is that because of what my husband had to walk her through when her mum was ill and died, and the difficult conversations he had to have with her, he's avoided sort of having difficult conversations with, because he doesn't want to go back to that place, and he's tired, you know, having to see her so upset and not be able to do anything. So actually he's kind of avoided having difficult conversations with her, which means that actually in hindsight all of the disciplining has fallen down to me.
So when you say difficult conversations, you mean discipline, boundaries?
Telling her off, making her feel bad, basically. Right. So, and whereas I will say something, make her feel bad, and just accept the fact she feels like that and let her feel it, because then it has the impact. You know, he would, even if he'd said something, he would then make a joke or do something to make her feel better, which then undermined anything he had been trying to pull her up on.
Right.
So we realized that, and that was quite a big revelation, really. And we realized he had very much, I think from listening to Stepmum Space, it gave me the language to be able to talk to him, which was great. So we realised that he had been a real Disney dad and I'd become the wicked stepmother, you know, and she and I didn't have that relationship, the foundation of relationship to withstand all of the me doing all the discipline. And also she had been gone for like 5 years without really being disciplined because while her mum was ill and her mum died, she was surrounded by adults who just wanted to make sure she was okay. And so actually they just sort of treated her all the time and, you know, spoilt her in different ways. And, you know, she went through one of the most horrific things that kids do, but she that was also spoilt quite a lot through that. It meant she then wasn't really pulled up on stuff because everyone was so worried about how she was feeling. She's also an only child, so she didn't have that sort of normal conflict with siblings where they would just call you out on stuff and take the mick out of you and stuff. So she wasn't used to being teased or any of that, you know, people joking about her or anything like that. So it was an interesting situation that we found ourselves in.
So you mentioned you'd kind of worked out why it had been happening. Does that mean now that your husband's sort of stepped up and accepted, okay, I can't always be really, 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 really nice to her?
Yeah, so it's great. It's totally changed the whole dynamic of the house now. So he has stepped up. So he's basically said, right, I'm going to be the main disciplinarian now for a season, and actually you're not going to do any of it. So it means the thing is, we had this conversation with my stepdaughter, so she knows this. She's been able to see why we've got in this situation, and it helped her. And so actually so she can see that actually why it's now her dad pulling her up on things, and that they have a very strong relationship from what they've been through that can withstand that. He's taken on the boat. He and I talk about it, and we would agree on the consequences. I mean, most of the time it is me noticing things anyway, because he's a bloke and 13-year-old girls are more manipulative than people give them credit for. So
oh my God, absolutely.
So yeah, having been a 13-year-old girl in the past, I'm able to say, you do know that why she's doing that or why she said that, right? So so it's very much us talking about it and agreeing it, and then he actually implements it and he talks to her about it, which has really helped because it means she's not on edge expecting me to sort of wondering what I'm thinking. And she and I have got some breathing space to really build our own relationship.
And how's that changed things between you and her?
It's just so much easier. So what we realized was that I think because she was feeling so on edge around me, when it was me and her, she would go into this really over the top polite like persona and it would really wind me up. And so she would be like really sweet and polite, and it was just fake and it was just annoying. And so then I would be on edge because I was like, you know, I can't even relax in my own home because she's acting like that. And so I didn't know how to be around her because when she was sort of playing that role. So it just got really difficult and sort of us not wanting to be around each other. Whereas actually now, you know, we've talked to her about that and the importance of just being real, and she's allowed to be a grumpy around me, like that's okay, and things like that. So actually now I think both of us are a lot more just relaxed around each other, and she is a lot more herself and just honest about where she's at and things. So it's definitely changed things a lot.
That's good. It's so good that you and your husband and her can talk in kind of your different pairs or your trio about these types of things. It must have been quite helpful to her having counselling before, that she's maybe more in touch with her feelings than a lot of 13-year-olds.
So she and I both have counselling at the moment as well. For me, it's been such a huge transition to go from being single and having my own place. And, you know, if I'm honest, I didn't really expect to get married. I didn't think I would. Like, I was quite happy being single. And so actually it's been quite a big transition for me. And then obviously with the addition of how his late wife's family have reacted and all that sort of stuff as well. So I've been seeing a counsellor, which has been great, but so is she, because we've moved house. You know, she's moved away from the town that she knows, the church she knows, the school she knows. And so it's a huge transition. And I think she's reluctant because she had bereavement counselling before. When we were talking about counselling, we were kind of explaining that actually it's okay to actually look at other things that are hard. Counselling doesn't have to all be about the fact your mum died. And so I think she was quite relieved about that it wasn't going to just be sitting talking about that.
Even if you don't think you need counselling, you can still benefit from counselling.
Absolutely.
It's having that space, isn't it? It's what a lot of the women I work with in coaching will just be so happy to have a space where you can talk, nobody's going to judge you, you can actually explore the things for yourself in a way that everyday life doesn't allow you to.
Definitely.
So you talked a bit about how you had been single, you didn't think you'd get married, but not only did you get married, you acquired, if that's the right word, a child 100% of the time. So
Yes.
how's that been for your relationship with your husband?
It's been hard. I mean, so we talk about how, in the normal, whatever that is, so to speak, you sort of meet someone, you date, you decide you want to get married, or move in together, you get together, and then you sort of work out how you live together, you work out how you manage money together, you work out how you manage your social life, and you create that together as well. And then you decide you want to have kids, and then you have kids, and then while the kid is still like oblivious to everything in the world, you work out how you parent together. Whereas when you come into a situation as a step parent, you come in with a child there from day one, and it's almost like you're having to build those foundations with the house already built, and it's really hard. So for us, as I said earlier, not having that space and that time together was hard. I became their bubble during COVID, so it meant that I was there a lot and I saw them a lot, which meant in a way for us it was quite a greenhouse, so we grew together as a family quite quickly. But what it meant was that I think before we got married, my husband and I had been on about 5 dates, partly because of COVID, but partly because obviously she is with us all the time. And so for us it was the evenings that were a big thing. But what we found at the beginning was she would become quite emotional in the evenings, and he would have to manage her quite a lot in the evenings. So then that kind of got later and later. So I was ending up driving home like 40 miles at like 3-4 in the morning just because we were trying to get some time together. Obviously, as she's getting older as well, they stay up later, which is difficult. So what we try and do is every few months we'll try and go away for a night together, and obviously just try and, wherever possible, each week if we can, go out together or spend time together. We work from home 2 days a week together, so that's quite interesting. but yeah, I think she's more independent now. She's quite independent on the buses and seeing friends and stuff, so that helps definitely. But it's just grabbing any bit we can, I suppose.
So you mentioned that you guys had moved to a new town. What was the driver behind that?
It was interesting actually. So when we first started talking about being together and what that looked like, obviously in a situation like this you have to have big conversations really early on. So for me there was a deal breaker. I was already partway through the process of becoming registered to become a foster carer, which is what I've always wanted to do. And so he knew for me that was on the card. So then early on we were saying, right, one day in the future we'll do this together. And actually now he's really keen to do that, which is great. But for him it was like, well, actually I can't move because my daughter's just lost her mum, and actually I can't then move her away from everything she knows. So I was like, you're going to have to move here. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But that was really early on. And as time went on, it got harder and harder because I didn't want to move there. It wasn't somewhere that I would choose to move. And they had moved house since his late wife died, which was great because at least then they weren't in the house they had lived in with her, which made things easier. But their house was still decorated. All the furniture was what she had chosen, and it was all stuff they'd moved from the old house. And she and I have incredibly opposite taste in everything and very different personalities, so it's very different. It was difficult, and actually we got to a point further on where I basically turned around and said, I don't know if I can do this. And actually I've been sort of waiting to change my mind and like for my heart to change on it, but actually I just don't know if I can do it because she was such a big character, like in their church and in their friendship group and stuff, and everyone knew her. And I was like, I can't come and just feel like I'm living in someone else's shadow all the time, to the point where thinking, this is really serious, we may actually break up over this. And he, in true internal processor style, just turned around and was like, oh yeah, no, it's fine, I'm happy to move. He was like, oh no, yeah, she's actually doing really well and it's okay, and actually I think it would be all right if we moved.
You've been agonizing for nights about this conversation, and he didn't think to
thinking we're about to break up. But so actually what happened was we got married and I moved there, and I was miserable, if I'm really honest. I was away from everyone I knew, and it was really hard, and I was living in a house where this isn't how I would have chosen to have the house and stuff. It was quite suffocating, if I'm honest. But then I think it was almost 6 months to the day that we'd been married, we moved. So fairly early on after we married, we realised we needed to go. We've moved to a town that's halfway between where I was and where he was. So it means actually we're able to see both our friends, like our old friends, which is really nice. but it means she's in a new school and we've got a new church and it's all new, really. It's exciting. It's really exciting. And the great thing is meeting people here who only know us as us.
Yeah.
And that's been really significant for us.
Yeah, because you talked a bit earlier about feeling like you're kind of the second of somebody, and I guess starting as we are just us, the three of us, and we are what we are, it must be a really beautiful feeling to have.
Yeah, it is. And I think my husband calls them turds in the dark. What we find in this situation is we come across things unexpectedly that sort of blow up, and that, you know, emotional things. So in the early days, it was like at their old house, I'd have a cup of coffee in a coffee mug and it'd be like, oh no, that was mummy's mug, you know, and things like that.
Yeah.
And different things where recently she had to go and have her head glued because she'd banged it in PE, and they discovered that her mum was still down as her emergency contact. And, you know, so that sort of was a bit of a wobble for her. So we just find that these things come up where we don't see them. That is just the case, and that's what happens.
One of the big things that comes up when I speak to women who are in relationships with widowers is photographs, and how you manage to kind of create your home and create your own safe space that's just about you guys, but also was respecting somebody else's memory. How have you navigated that? And have you got any tips for anyone who might be listening?
Yeah, so I think for us, the big thing is to talk about it. And we talk about it all with my stepdaughter. So, you know, we're really open about it. And actually, she ended up taking down the photos of in their old house of like their wedding photos and things like that, because she said, oh, that would be too difficult for Jane. That's not fair on her. So she was actually the one that did that.
Wow.
And then but then actually they were moving anyway. So just when we first started seeing, they were in the house that they were with his late wife, but then they moved really, really early on. And so she took them down, and then when they moved, they just never obviously put them back up. In a way, that was an easy transition. But we're just really open with her, and, you know, I'm very honest with her, and I'm like, I don't have any problem with seeing pictures of you and your mum. I was like, she was your mum, like I knew her, like it's absolutely fine to have pictures of your mum. I said, the thing that I find difficult is pictures of your dad and your mum, because actually he's my husband, and actually that's really hard to see. And so she totally gets that. So we basically have not a rule, but sort of a thing where she can have photos up in her room. She's got a big canvas of her and her mum and dad in her room, and she does that. And, you know, it's just sort of agreed that that's what we do, and we have pictures of the rest of us up everywhere else. But it is really difficult, because then she goes to her grandparents and there's pictures, she's like, there's photos of mum everywhere, even in the toilet. They're very much trying to keep her alive, so they've got her everywhere. So she struggled with that initially, but I think she's starting to get used to it now. But it is trying to get that balance of honouring her, but also trying not to live under that shadow. And I think my husband has a really healthy attitude, which is really helpful, because it's easy, I think, as a stepmom, for your mind to kind of get lost down a rabbit hole. Like, my stepdaughter's being parented so differently to how she would have been had her mum been alive, just because I'm so different. Whereas he's very much, yes, but I decided early on after she died that actually I'm not going to worry about that. He said, because she hasn't parented her as a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old. So actually you will never know how she would have parented. So there's no point worrying about it. So he's very much like very matter of fact about it. And I'm like, you know, when I get annoyed at her, then I feel guilty, because I'm like, well, her mum would have given anything to be here parenting her. And I'm like resenting the fact I have to go to like a school thing, or I have to do this or stuff. So, but he's just quite matter of fact and pulls me up on it, really.
And like, all those feelings that you have are absolutely fine, but it's the guilt that gets you.
Yeah. I've very much learned that. And I think, to be honest, it's through listening to Stepmum Space that kind of released me of that, really, and made me realise that, because sort of a few months ago I just decided that I wasn't going to do that anymore, and it really changed everything. And it didn't weigh me down as much as it used to at all. But it is one of those things as well where you kind of just have to take control of your thoughts and stop them. But, you know, when you're having a bad day and you're feeling insecure, it's really hard, because there's so much you can then just draw upon to make yourself feel worse. Obviously, when she was ill and when she died, he lived it very publicly. So he had an Instagram account that he posted on daily to like sort of his grief journey, and it got quite a lot of traction. So a lot of people were following him. And so then all it would take is for me to go and look at that and look at how much it was gushing about her and how wonderful she was and stuff, that you can then sort of lose your mind a little bit. You know, I think one of the unique challenges in terms of a widower situation rather than a a divorce is that they can do no wrong anymore. To a degree, their memories are what they choose them to be. If I'm ever compared to her, whoever is comparing makes the choice as to who is better or not. So for my stepdaughter, her memories of when she was a lot younger, so she can in a way remember her mum however she wants to. So if I'm pissing her off, like, she can turn around and go, "Oh, mum wouldn't do it." And fortunately, my husband's very good at being like, "Oh no, she would." So he's very good at sort of keeping it real. But it is really hard because you feel like you're sort of living with a ghost, and she can be as wonderful as they want to make her out to be, and that's really hard to live with, really, sometimes, because you're like, well, I'm just real and I get things wrong, and actually I mess up quite a lot.
And also she would have done that, but you're spot on that people's memories are, scientifically proven to be highly unreliable.
Yes.
So, calling on your memory is something that we all do, right? But it's not real. But that must be really difficult for you to be in the middle of. But it sounds like things are going from strength to strength through that really open communication, the support you've got from your husband and, your family and friends, at least. So it sounds like you're going in the right direction. What are your big hopes or fears for the future?
I would say one big hope is that we can find a really healthy dynamic with her family, that they can get to a point, I don't want to separate them. I don't want, they are my stepdaughter's family, and I want them to be a part of that. But actually, what I'd really like is for them to accept me. This doesn't mean me going to things or, being involved, but just that it can become a healthier dynamic for her, really, and just make things easier for her. I think also just that over time we will feel more established as a family, and in the future hopefully we will be fostering and things like that, and just that will make us feel like kind of a strong family unit. We've got 2 dogs now that we've got since we're married, so that really helps, because it means, whilst I'm not planning to have any biological children of my own, at least I've got the dogs, which are new to me. So I've trained them, so which is quite nice. I think a big part of it is just that we can kind of go forward and just enjoy life and make the most of it, and not have to get bogged down in a lot of the crap that we've had to in the last few years, really, and that we can just sort of let it go and just enjoy being us.
Yeah, good for you. And especially given what your stepdaughter and husband have already been through, it's no wonder that they want to just enjoy life. And that's why it's such a shame that her family don't see it in the same way.
We're in a situation now where there's so much potential for happiness and for contentment and for joy and, for so much good to come about. But at the moment it feels like, particularly them, but it just feels like certain things just sort of are holding things back a little bit. So hopefully over time it will improve.
Well, look, thank you so much for talking to me today. I've loved it. I'd like to talk to you for longer. But it'd be really good to talk again in the future, because everything about your story is so interesting. So do keep in touch.
Thank you. It's been good to speak to you too. And thank you for Stepmum Space, because clearly it's been such a lifeline. My husband's noticed the change as well when I come back and I've been listening to it, and it's like other people feel like this too.
Oh, I'm so pleased. That just means the world to me, because it's all done in my free time by me on my own.
It's a game changer, honestly. It's so good. I think just knowing that there's people out there, it can be so isolating. So knowing there's people out there who feel the same, and like we said, to not have to associate that guilt and those sort of things, because you realize that actually I'm just normal, and actually anyone in this situation would feel like this. And by having compassion and empathy for other women that whose stories you hear, it helps you have compassion and empathy for yourself, I think.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that.
Oh, what a gorgeous note to finish on. Having compassion and empathy for yourself. So important. The road a stepmom walks is never easy, often filled with, as Jane's husband puts it, turds in the dark. Love that. So whatever comes up for you this Christmas, please remember to have compassion for yourself. And as I mentioned at the start of the show, if you want to take some steps to improving your situation, do get yourself booked on one of our Stepmum Space workshops in January. 100% of women recommend them, and 100% think they're good value for money. So that's the end of Series 3, folks. I can't believe it. We will be back in the new year with a new series. In the meantime, if you need a Stepmum Space fix, please do follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Stepmum Space, or join the conversations on the forum on the website stepmumspace.com. And as always, if you've got a story to share, please do get in touch. We couldn't make this show without the women who come forward. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please do rate or review wherever you're listening and hit subscribe to be notified when the new series drops. Finally, have a wonderful Christmas, and remember, whatever you're going through, you are not alone, and there is always someone in our community who can be there to offer support. So just reach out. Happy Christmas, and thank you so much for all your support.